Please note that the views expressed on this program are those of the individuals who speak them, and not necessarily those of Portsmouth Community Radio, its Board of Trustees, members, volunteers, or underwriters. Good evening and welcome to Spirit Radio. I am your host, Willie Hassel. Along with my co-host, Lynn Nickerson, we will take you on a journey into the unknown where the paranormal becomes the normal. A journey to a world cloaked in darkness where reality becomes a thin veil. So sit back, relax, and join us as we venture into the shadows, the darkness, the unknown, and back. Okay, good evening once again, and welcome to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience. My name is Willie Hassel. I am your gatekeeper to the dark side, your guide to the realm of the unknown, the unseen, the unthinkable. And as always, joining me here in the studio, she is lovely, she is mysterious, she is mystical, she is Lynn Nickerson.
Good evening, Willie. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm great. Lynn, how are you doing tonight?
Very well, thank you. Well, it's not snowing, but the temperature hasn't gone up any, has it?
No. I did wear my summer shirt tonight, though.
I noticed that. You look like you're going to Hawaii.
I'm pushing the season. I figure it's March 1st. It's about that time.
It's wishful thinking, Willie.
Yeah, wishful thinking is what it is. So, do we have a guest tonight? Is anybody going to come in and join us?
You know, we do have a guest tonight. This is A.J. Kitt, and you guys have an intro over there, don't you?
I do.
Well, why don't you tell us about him?
Well, joining us tonight from the Kitt Research Initiative in Greenland, New Hampshire, he's ghost hunter, paranormal investigator, and the author of the book, Ghosts, Science, and the Number 42. He seeks the truth about life after death through research. Please welcome our good friend, Andy Kitt.
Welcome, Andy.
Hello.
And can we hear Andy?
I don't know.
Can we hear Andy now?
Can we hear Andy now?
No, we don't. We don't hear Andy.
Andy is here in the studio, and he's going to join us momentarily. Actually, he's a figment of our imagination. I think we have a ghost in the studio, Willie. There we go.
Let's try that. There we go.
Yeah, that one's
better.
Working. Okay.
I thought he was here.
Yeah, I know. Apparently Mike 2 isn't working tonight.
Yeah, it does that. Well, Andy, we've both read your book, Ghost Science and the Number 42, and quite frankly, I found it fascinating, particularly the first quarter. I found that you were really writing from the heart, and you are a really bright guy, and you get into a lot of technological stuff, but I didn't think you had that in you. I loved hearing about your father.
Yeah, the book is divided into 3 sections. The first section is largely what got me involved in this. I started off ghost hunting. I read, paranormal literature in the past, and it was all just academic. It didn't matter because it didn't affect my life. Then in 2007, my father died, and
you experienced it firsthand, didn't you?
All of a sudden, it started to matter. And
yeah.
The more you go into it, the more you realize that most people who ghost hunt are literally just ghost hunting. They're not actually doing anything to move science forward. So we make those observations in the book, some of the things that can be done differently to improve the nature of the evidence that people collect. The second part of the book is largely talks about the science involved and why skepticism is no better than even the most credulous believers. I mean, people say a lot of things based on just their intuitive feelings, and you can't put numbers on that easily, and nobody really tries. And the skeptical voice out there is every bit as absurd as even the strangest claims of the believer crowd.
I loved what you had to say about skeptics, and they were trying to support their, how did you place it? How did you say it again? Their ever-evolving their failing philosophy of life?
God. Well, everything about skepticism is a fail science. Skepticism, literally, there's some talk that there needs to be some amount of skepticism in science, but that's not true. Science is based on observation and
fact.
Being non-biased. If you are skeptical, it means you won't even look at the problem. So, in a very real sense, skepticism is sort of reactionary science. It says what exists.
It should
is all
almost
that
be
exists.
a preliminary to ghost hunting, but then it should evolve into the scientific end of things.
Absolutely.
And you pretty much your ghost investigation style leans towards the scientific. You need proof, but
we're probably better than the average ghost hunting team as to what we include or exclude as far as evidence. But we're not really, there's nothing really scientific to it because it's all just observation right now and being able to categorize what exactly you're experiencing. And that's probably the biggest difference between what we do and other people do is that we actually keep a log. If there's 10 EVP in this site and 0 in that one, we keep track of that from site to site.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then you can go back and you can corroborate everything. And you did mention that in your book, too. And that really starts giving stuff that it makes it more factual, makes it more authentic when you can corroborate it like that.
Yes. The biggest difference between what most people do and what science does, observational studies are a thoroughly legitimate form of science. You don't have to sit there and take something into lab to test it. I mean, when you're talking about how animals interact, it's useless to bring them to the lab because the lab atmosphere stifles their interactions.
Yeah.
So you have to observe them in nature. Yeah. And when you're talking about ghosts, it's like, well, how do you bring them into a lab? I mean, they can walk through walls. They can just walk out of the lab whenever they want. There's no way to hold them there.
That's
and
true.
even if you did, it would radically affect how they acted or interacted. So although there is lab testing of some aspects of
that's right, the paranormal. Yeah.
So, in fact, there's extensive testing on EVP, and they've done it in quiet rooms where a room that's 99.9% echo and sound free. If you stand in that room too long, you will actually start having audio hallucinations.
I bet you would.
And they have collected EVP in there. They have collected EVP in Faraday cages, which is a way to eliminate radio frequency interference. And just the testing is been going on since the 60s.
And what is your take on EVPs?
Honestly, right now I'm working on a PhD in visual psychophysics. I'm working on the nature of how people perceive the world around them. And after I'm done with that, I'm probably going to go into audio phenomena specifically. My first look at it says, yes, these are voices. They do not belong there. How they get there, I don't know. I do have a problem calling it EVP, though, because that implies it is only electrical in nature. But back in the heyday of spiritualism, they used to use hearing horns, which were basically just really long trumpets, and you could hear it without any electronic addition. So it's just a strange presence of voices in the wrong places.
You might not have been able to hear it, though, all the time, just because of the frequency or the decibel of the EVP.
Correct.
Right.
The hearing horns were basically for deaf people. It amplified the ambient sound. So,
that's interesting.
Yes. In fact, if you look at old pictures of the mediums from the 1860s, 1870s, you'll see every once in a while, you'll see one holding this 4-foot, looks like a trumpet or a Roman horn or something like that.
Yeah.
But don't you still think that EVPs are electrical in nature?
No.
Magnetic?
Well,
not at all.
You don't, huh?
They're not, no, but I mean, the term EVP would be correct, well, these days, because we are collecting it electronically.
Yep.
So it would be technically.
So now,
where do you think
if you collect it mechanically, though, do you have two different phenomena? Do you have electronic voice phenomena, the ones you got on audio recorders that are like digital and electronic? And do you have just VP for the ones that are collected wholly mechanically? It's the same phenomena. It's just the method of collection.
The method of collecting it, yeah.
Well, what would be collected wholly mechanically?
Actually, I have an engineer in Rochester working on the problem. He's going to try to do it, record it to graph paper. But you can go out and get an old Edison recorder that recorded on wax. That was an entirely mechanical process.
Okay.
Oh,
right.
so would a tape recorder be that as well?
No, because you have all the electronics and
Okay.
the
magnetic tape on it,
magnetic sensors.
Yeah.
Sure. So there are options. It's just nobody does them because, people don't look. Science doesn't sit there and just do stuff. They sit there and look at the problem and say, okay, what more can we find out by doing it this way? What more can we find out by doing it that way? And it's always about collecting better and better models of how the phenomena work.
Right. And, of course, I mean, now everybody just goes out and buys their little digital recorders because that's what they use on the TV shows.
Well, that's where we started, and it works.
I know you. That's where you started. Yeah.
So
you said, well, this is the way Ghost Hunters does it, so this must be the way to do it.
You got to start somewhere, and it's thoroughly acceptable to do that. Just bear in mind that that's not the end of the road.
Right. That's a starting point.
Right. And once you confirm that that's going on, then you either have to find a way to put numbers on it. So let's say you're investigating a non-haunted house and you get no EVP. Okay, cool. Then you go to a house you believe is haunted, and all of a sudden you start getting EVP. Then you can make numerical comparisons between what you can expect in one site and what to expect in the other. And the real value of science is its predictive value. So if you sit there and establish a relationship like that, somebody believes their house is haunted, you should be able to walk into it and collect X% more EVP in that site than a non-haunted site.
Right. You have made the statement to us before that if you were to go to the same place every day and run a recorder for 10 minutes, eventually you would get an EVP.
And that is my experience, yes. And I've collected some really, really cool ones. I do this pretty much every year. I will sit there and it takes anywhere from 10 to 12 sessions for me. But yeah, I will sit there and pick the same time every day, do 10 minutes of audio recording, just ask whatever kind of questions you want to know the answers to, and give it a few seconds and ask another one, and just keep asking questions for 10 minutes.
And you just do this any random place?
Pick the two in the same place every day.
The same place and do it every day.
I realize that, but
yes.
Like different sessions you'll do, how do you pick a place?
I just, wherever I'm comfortable. Actually, the last time I did it, I just sat in a beanbag in my bedroom.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
And
someone came and talked to you there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time, my bedroom was off my office, and creepy things go on there anyhow. Just because the more you believe in this stuff, the more this stuff believes in you, and it will seek you out.
Well, let me ask you something then. What would be the difference to you scientifically, or how would you explain this? Some people do hear an auditory phenomenon without the help of mechanical devices or electronic devices. So let's say that some EVP or some voice is loud enough to hear with the ear, and some aren't. So are you saying that they're both, they exist in the same dimension? They are the same thing in the time and space continuum?
Okay, this is where it gets real interesting.
Well, that's what we're looking for.
There's actually I make a reference to it in the book, but we have when we investigate, everybody wears an audio recorder. So and all the audio recorders are stereo sound, so you can actually localize the sound in the room pretty well if you have enough of the recorders in the room. And in one case, we had a medium in there. We had a camera on the medium, and she's sitting there explaining what's going on in the place. And, then she started meandering, talking about the place across the street. And we get an EVP that says no. And she reacted to it. And she said, never mind. Let's go talk about something else now. And, the voice was not heard by any of us. It clearly wasn't her.
She heard it, though, right? The medium heard it?
She didn't act like she heard it, but she did respond to it.
So do you know after talking to her if she heard it or not?
She has very poor recall of anything that happens during
in a trance. So okay.
It's not a full trance, but a full trance,
She is in some sort of altered state, though. Well, she has no recall
We've never
consciously.
actually tested that. She's very coherent. There is no reason to believe she's in an altered state, but she definitely doesn't store it in memory as she goes.
I would call that an altered state. But but the point is, Had she not been in an altered state, I mean, there are people who experience audio phenomena without the mechanical equipment.
Absolutely.
So wouldn't you suppose that it's really just a case of decibels, really? Decibels being decreased that are picked up on the audio equipment? Therefore, they're actually the same thing.
It could be, but there's easier ways to think of it. Perception isn't as immediate and direct and reflective of reality as you think it is.
True.
Just so you know, every time you're in a closed room and you're talking, you are creating echoes. And your ears, there's nerve signals. When it interprets the sound in the room, it will go back to the ear, dampen your ears so you don't hear the echo. If the echo takes place, I think it's 200 millisecond threshold. If it's less than that, the ears will actually suppress what you hear, so you don't hear your voice twice.
Oh, your mind suppresses it.
Yes.
Yes.
And I mean, that's anytime there's a loud noise, the brain will automatically suppress the cochlea, the inside the cochlea, so you don't damage your ear. You're very interactive with what you hear. And the fact that you can pick up the same EVP across 5 recorders suggests it's not something electronic to one recorder. It's a area of effect thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't call it an electronic effect if mechanical means can pick it up. So all of a sudden, what is it? Well, maybe there's sounds in the room that nobody is interpreting because they don't think they should be there. People are deliberately suppressing it, either consciously or unconsciously, either physically or entirely cerebrally, cortexually. For whatever reason, they just the noises are there and they just aren't
They aren't picking up on them.
And in fact, we've had one case where we investigated a bar that supposedly had a ghost of a little girl in it. And there's 5 people in the room. And as 4 of them leave, you get the voice of a little girl saying hi. And the only person to hear it was the one, but she heard it. She heard it, freaked out, and did not want to stick around that place anymore. So,
but she heard it, and then it also showed up on the recorder, but the other people didn't hear it.
Right, and it was fairly loud. I mean, it was, if that was, first, the audio recorders also aren't, I mean, they filter out low threshold sounds. So something has to be fairly loud to be picked up on an audio recorder anyhow. Everybody sits there and tries to mark their audio recorders if a dog barks in the distance. You know, just pay attention to what you mark. If you do that yourself, pay attention to what you're marking and listen and see if you actually heard the dog bark on the audio. Most of the time you won't. It has to be pretty loud before you actually need to mark something.
And by the way, we are taking calls this evening, and if anybody would like to talk to Andy or ask him a question, you're welcome to call 603-430-9722, and he will help you out.
Am I the only one that's getting this noise? Can you hear it too?
What noise is it?
Oh, I'm getting a lot of real staticky noise.
Not on this end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything either.
Good.
I brought a ghost with me.
Uh-oh.
He's playing with you.
Well, one of the other burning questions that I've got that I'd really like to talk to you about, you're talking about in the book exactly what a ghost is. And you bring up the issue that not only can you see something, sometimes it comes in clothes, or sometimes you see an inanimate object like a ship. So how is it that a ship doesn't have a soul, your clothing doesn't have a soul, the person with the clothing does have a consciousness? So I'd like to hear your take on that. I kind of think it has something to do with time and dimensions rather than, well, who knows? And that's not necessarily something that we can define scientifically yet because we don't have a way of measuring different dimensions. So I'd like to get your taste on your take on what ghosts are.
Okay, first, there's a lot of different things that people are reporting as ghosts. Clearly, at least some of the reports are talking about interactive personalities that don't have bodies. That's not a question. The fact that we get stuff answering questions on EVP demonstrates there is an awareness there that is in the moment and
consciousness. Yes.
The fact that it has language is pretty powerful too. I mean, language doesn't accidentally happen. You know, it's not. Environmental sounds very rarely come across as cohesive words or coherent words. But there are also many occasions where it appears that history replays in a situation.
Right. Almost like a tape recorder over and over again.
Right. So there's different qualities to what people claim are ghosts. And I mean, most of these words that we're using, ghost,
apparition.
Apparition is so they don't have to use the word hallucination.
Yeah.
These words were applied by science. I mean,
hallucination doesn't apply here because that is more internal rather than external.
It's all internal.
Yeah, I think so too. So to me, that doesn't.
Right now, you looking at me across this table, this is just, you seeing me is just an internal representation in your head.
Mm-hmm.
What you think of as color is entirely invented by your brain. There's nothing in the world called, no physical object has color.
Nope.
It's a lot more complicated than I'm going to go into right here, but
it still leads me to believe that a ghost, even though you're receiving it through your optical nerve, it's still something that is happening externally to you, rather than an hallucination, which is more in your mind.
That is one of the assumptions of science, but hallucination, by definition, is anything you perceive that you believe is in the external environment that doesn't have a physical cause. So technically, yes, a ghost is a hallucination because it doesn't have a physical presence. Whether you see it, hear it, smell it, it's a hallucination if the mechanical cause is not in the environment. But that's part of the problem. Is it there and we're just not, the mechanical senses can't pick it up and there's another sense in the background that is?
I think you're splitting hair with the definition.
But that's part of how science works,
Well, in this case, isn't it defined? I mean, hallucination pretty much does happen. It's a perception of your mind. Is
perception. All of perception is a hallucination.
Whereas there isn't a cause for it externally. The cause is internal.
Okay, you're going to have to rephrase that for me.
The cause is internal. It's not external. Whereas if you see a ghost, for hallucinations.
Right.
But if you see a ghost, the cause is external, being perceived internally.
That depends. I mean, how do you know that it is external? If I look across this room and see a poster on the wall, is that real? And I don't know until I touch it and I have multiple senses working, or I ask you and you see it too.
If anything you see, then it could be a figment of your imagination. But
exactly.
we're trying to get to the bottom of that.
Well, these are the fundamental problems of science and why science is having trouble approaching the problem. One of the theories of ghosts, and this is from the Parapsychology Association, there really is national agency, but there's a organization recognized by the American Academy of Sciences or whatever it is, the AAS, for parapsychology.
You're talking the Society of Psychical Research?
No, that's British.
I know.
So no,
it's American too. American Society.
Well, there's the ASPR also, but that's kind of defunct. Their website hasn't been modified in 6 or 7 years.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I checked this stuff. So, but the Parapsychology Association is legitimate, research-oriented organization devoted to these phenomena, and their principal theory on how ghosts probably work is something called the. Oh, geez, now I'm going to have to go into my memory and pull this out. Super psi phenomena, where you're not actually perceiving the environment, you're perceiving somebody else's thoughts and expectations. So,
that's out there.
But it's a very real possibility, and they haven't been able to eliminate it yet.
Yes, and it's still a theory, and I have a theory for you on this.
Okay.
I've thought about this a lot, and given that you do see inanimate objects that appear to be either fully real or appear as diaphanous or then just disappear, you would think maybe that's a hallucination. But what if they are part of another dimension that interacts with our own? So we are in a 3D world. And if we see a ghost, I don't know if it's fourth or fifth dimension, but the idea is that it's interacting with our 3D world. And then through some interstice, there we go, that it passes that point and it goes back into the other dimension again, where it fails to continue to connect to our 3D reality. That would answer why we see inanimate objects and things like clothes on ghosts, because we are not only seeing something, we are also perceiving, in many cases with the ghosts, it's consciousness. We're perceiving it, but not necessarily seeing it. So the consciousness is surviving, and it's interacting with our 3D world, as well as perceptually it's interacting with our 3D world.
Okay, when you start talking about dimensions beyond the 3+1,
No proof, I realize, but
yeah, because
someday they'll be able to prove it.
Well,
the space between atoms, they know it exists, and I don't know if they can really prove it now.
They can't prove atoms exist. They can
exactly
prove that
my
there's
point.
a point in space that has qualities attributed to it. Those qualities are fairly regular from moment to moment, so they say that that's got mass. Mass is something's resistance to change. That's all it is. There's no, we've never seen an atom, and the deeper we look, the more we realize that
around atoms.
It's not really there.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of the.
So what is really real, Andy? What is real? What is reality?
What is real is what you perceive as real. That's an interesting question too, because the bottom line is. The only reason we think anything is real is because it's there the next time we look, or because two people are talking about the same object and both of us are saying, "Oh, there it is."
Well, I think we've got a caller here.
Yeah, I see a funny light blinking. I'm hoping that's what that is.
Yeah, someone who's interested in our argument, I would hope. Maybe somebody can help support it one way or the other.
It's not an argument. It's just a discussion I have
a discourse.
Yes. So, I don't know. There's problems when you start thinking in multiple dimensions if you can't perceive the dimension. So
because we don't even know how many dimensions there are.
Well,
we just suspect because of activity or behavior of certain atoms or things that there are other dimensions. And
dimensions can't really be called up that way. I mean, the reason we believe in 3 spatial dimensions is because we can measure them.
That's right. It can be measured.
There's width, there's height. The reason we believe in time is because we perceive in time.
Yep.
So what other dimension would there be? A dimension is a way of physically measuring the universe.
But see, once you get into other dimensions, they cease to be physical. And is there someone on the phone, Willie?
Yes, we have a caller on the line. Andy, that wants to talk to you.
All right.
Hello? Are you there, caller? Uh-oh, where did you go? Did you go away? Hello? No, maybe we don't.
You didn't put him on permanent hold, did you?
I might have. You never know.
Darn.
Okay. Well, we did have a caller. He must have gone away.
Caller, if you could call back, we're
still here.
We're not adept at the switchboard.
We're still here, and we will be for a while. We're not going anywhere. However,
we're at the bottom of the hour.
Yes, it is the bottom of the hour. It is time for a break.
We're going to have to take a couple minutes break here.
When we come back from the break, Andy, I think we need to talk about the dreaded orb debate.
I think that's an excellent idea.
I know Lynn wants to talk about orbs. She wants to argue with you.
Well, just discuss ideas.
Argue, discuss. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
All right.
You are listening to Spirit Radio, the Paranormal Experience, on WSCALP 106.1 FM in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And we will be right back after this short break.
This is Cal Cooper, parapsychologist and author of Telephone Calls from the Dead and co-author of Conversations with Ghosts. You're listening to Spirit Radio with Willie Hassel and Lynn Nickerson on WSCA 106.1 FM, Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Okay, and from the community calendar. From the city of Portsmouth, a citywide parking ban goes into effect during storms that produce 2 inches of snow or more. During snow emergencies, announcements will be made on the Portsmouth Government Access Channel 22. Updates on the weather and parking also may be found at www.cityofportsmouth.com and through the Twitter accounts at Portsmouth DPW and at Park Portsmouth, and through the snow emergency phone number at 603-766-7669 SNO-SNOW.
And also on the community calendar, Spirit Chasers Paranormal of Hampton is hosting a presentation at the Lane Memorial Library in Hampton on Saturday afternoon, March 8th from 1 to 4 p.m. Doors will open at 12:30. Speakers will discuss a variety of paranormal subjects, including ghosts, hauntings, and EVPs, much the same as we're discussing tonight. There will also be a Ouija board collector and historian. All presenters are tops in their field from all over New England. 100% of the donations from this benefit will go to the NH SPCA for the care and feeding of the animals. All are welcome. For more information is available by emailing Willie, that's W-I-L-L-Y, at spiritchasersparanormal.com, or the phone number is 520-869-7001. And that is that, and we are back now with Andy Kitt. Welcome back, Andy.
Welcome back, Andy.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Now,
are we going to move on to orbs, or are you...
Sure, I think orbs is a good subject.
All right, okay.
We've been debating whether or not orbs have anything to do with ghosts and energy. So, Andy, what do you think about orbs in photographs or even visually?
All right, if you sit there and think about what an orb is, you can say for certain it is a light or discolored part of a photograph. Mm-hmm. And if you can tell me how that means ghost, I'm all ears, but it's a discolored part of a photograph. And yes, they exist. Do they mean ghosts? And unless it's carrying a sign that says, I'm a ghost, I have no reason to believe that that's so.
Do you not think that orbs cannot be paranormal evidence?
I'm saying that it's... I don't even know how to describe it as being paranormal. What it is a discolored part of a photograph. Photographs get discolored all kinds of ways. If you take a picture, I mean, we've done tests. I have taken pictures of pieces of dust suspended in the air that I could see, and it photographed as if it was an orb. I have flicked flour and cinnamon and sprayed water in front of cameras, and they look like orbs. So unless you can sit there and say that the dust wasn't in the air when you took the photograph, there's no way to say it's not dust.
But what is the chances that if it's dust, there is only one little speck of dust to make one single orb?
What is the chances that you can be in a room that has no dust suspended in the air?
And then get no orbs.
It happens all the time.
I mean,
it
if there's
the other way too.
Dust in the room,
I can say
then you should see all kinds of orbs. And there's always dust.
I can say for certain that under the right conditions, dust will appear as the same type of little white dot that you see on a photo.
Especially if you have it on the lens. I can understand that.
Actually, if it's on the lens, it will be completely invisible because that's within the focal length of the camera, and the camera won't even see it.
I've heard that you can see them, but setting that aside, what would be the difference then between capturing an orb and capturing a haze on film, which does look like an anomaly?
Yes, and there's also reason to question when people take photographs of hazes, because if you're sitting there outdoors and somebody is breathing heavily, a digital camera will pick up a person's breath, even though you can't see it.
And that's only under certain circumstances.
Yes.
So are you saying that anything visual like video or camera cannot be used as evidence for declaring that a ghost is present?
You have to come up with something pretty darn amazing to be able to say it's evidence, yes.
And what would that be, though?
Well, show it to me.
I mean, what would you expect to see that you think would be, without question, evidence visually?
An item taken from more than one angle at the same time, something captured in stereo. You can sit there and set up video cameras. If you set it up properly and record it properly, you can get stereo, ongoing video in stereo, 3D images. You pick up an orb that's 3 feet from the camera and it's on both lenses, then that is something that's not dust in front of one. That's something out there.
Right.
So,
and to back up what you're saying there, are you familiar with Steve Parsons?
No, I'm not.
No. Okay. Well, he did. He's from England, Parascience.
Okay.
And he did do an experiment with a stereo still camera, where taking orb photographs.
Okay.
And he did, I believe it was 650.
Okay.
Orb photographs that he got. And in every one of them, if you take the individual left and right, the orb only shows up in one. Which says, yes, it is something that's right up near the lens of the camera. So that does back up what you're saying.
But then you can get EVPs on one thing and not on another. So I would think the same thing could happen with light.
You don't.
And I mean, that does happen.
Very rare. It's very rare that you get an audio on one recorder that doesn't pick up all of them.
It may be rare, but it does happen. The same way you can hear something but then not pick it up. The tape doesn't pick it up.
Right.
Or the tape picks it up but you don't hear it.
Right.
So it's the same idea, and we're dealing with energy here.
Except a digital camera doesn't pick up energy while it picks up light energy. So do our eyes.
Yes.
Light energy, yeah.
It's light energy.
What about not a still photograph, but a video?
Where the orb is moving.
Yeah, when an orb, it doesn't come in from outside of the frame and pass through, but it materializes in the middle of the frame.
Yes, and that's because there's limited. First, you got to remember that if you're using night vision.
Yeah.
If you're using what?
If you're using night vision,
night vision.
CCDs generally have like a ring of LEDs, infrared LEDs, to illuminate the room. And we have dust isn't perfectly round. It's any shape. And as it rotates in the air, it's like a satellite. Watching a satellite go by in the sky and it blinks. That's just because it's rotating, and sometimes it reflects down and sometimes it doesn't. The same thing happens with orbs. Plus, it has to be in front of an LED so it can drift in. The moment the LED catches it right, it'll start fading into the scene, and then it'll fade back out. I mean, after 7 years and thousands of hours of seeing stuff in IR, we've got some really bizarre orbs, but calling them anything other than natural is kind of extreme, just because of the way the cameras work. There's just, if you want to sit there and put a 3-foot sealed tube and have the camera run through that, and you still get orbs, then I'll listen. But you need to make sure there's no dust in front of that. Within that 2-foot area in front of the lens, or do it in stereo. If you get it in stereo, I'll start listening and take that very seriously.
Okay.
I've personally seen floating balls of light on the scene of an investigation.
That's what I was just going to bring up.
It didn't show up on camera.
Yeah, so you have seen.
I have seen
orbs,
grapefruit
balls of light, whatever that you want to call them.
A grapefruit-sized ball of light, for luminance, for lack of a better word. It was semi-transparent. I watched it go between an individual and a row of bushes, and it passed right in front of an operating video camera. I mean, it's the size of a grapefruit, and the camera didn't pick it up.
Okay,
now
so
amazing.
You saw this, though, with your own eyes. So
I'm one of 3 people who saw it.
Okay,
so
3 people.
So
that's
what do you
even
think
better.
it was?
So,
I have no idea.
You saw light. You saw dust, and the camera didn't.
I saw a ball of luminance that passed between an individual and a row of hedges behind him. The camera did not pick it up. So that says something about the limitations of cameras.
Sure. So how would you define what it was you saw?
I call it a ball of luminance. It's not a ghost, because it didn't sit there and stop and say, hey, dude, I'm a ghost. Check me out. It made no effort to communicate. The important thing is, if you're trying to say it's a free-formed personality that doesn't have a physical body. It's got to do something to give you an indication that that's what it is.
Well, maybe it just hasn't transformed into where it's going.
Maybe, but
it could be just bleeding in and out of dimensions until it gets to where it's going.
But at the same time, I can sit there and call my pillow a hedgehog because it just hasn't transformed into a fully formed hedgehog. I can guess and make up stuff all I want, but until you can sit there and
yeah, that's not truly analogous, though, Andy.
That's not really, but it's not that far off either. You know, I mean, you can't attribute stuff to it. There's no reason to believe it's not just an inanimate natural phenomena until it does something selective. It has to selectively make some effort to communicate before you can believe that it has the powers of communication.
Well, how about if it selectively shows up in just one frame, not the preceding and not the following frame?
I can watch movies at the theater and see that happen all the time. And that once you watch enough video for hours and hours, and you pray for an orb just so something happens in the video.
Have you ever caught an orb that appeared to be in motion so that it was moving so quickly that the camera caught the trail of the orb?
Yeah, but that's not unusually. They're just the way digital cameras work. Digital cameras scan 200 frames a second. But
how about if only one orb did it and the rest of them didn't?
Okay, you have two objects moving at different ranges at different speeds.
Different speeds, that's right. And what would be the motivating force? I mean, several different winds? I don't think so.
I have video, but it's still I have video where you have little dots of light moving in very different directions, literally crossing paths in different directions. But without knowing the nature of the air currents, I can't say it's not dust. But even if it's not dust, I can't say it is a ghost.
Just within the frame of a camera, though, it would be very difficult to believe that it would be a couple of different wind speeds. It would just be kind of hard to. That's a stretch.
It doesn't have to be a different wind speed. It could just be different angles. Something moving 5 miles an hour at a 45-degree angle will appear to be moving at a different speed than something moving the same speed going directly at the camera. The one going directly at the camera will appear motionless.
How about motionless orbs and then one that's still moving? It just doesn't make sense to me. You wouldn't get a very individual air current affecting just one orb.
That's true.
Who's to say? Who's to say?
Again,
who's to say?
You're still saying it has powers of beyond what you observe isn't appropriate. I mean, if it makes no effort, if it makes no effort to communicate with you, you can't say that it can communicate.
That's not entirely the case either, because people often sense orbs and they'll get an impression of what or whom it might be.
But then they are getting an impression.
It's subjective, I realize. However, you have to take all of this into consideration.
I would, if you find a person like that, I would love to test them, because I can put numbers on that and I can tell you how accurate they are.
But that's kind of capricious. I mean, people feel differently different days, and some days they get different impressions.
It'll still leave a statistical trail. If they can do it more than absolute random, then
I would consider it proof. I'm glad to know that you might too.
Yes, but then the problem is, though, how many of the other orbs are just dust? Because I can prove to you that dust will appear that way. So
all right, let's. I think we've beaten orbs to death.
Okay.
How many investigations have you done, Andy?
I lost track after 100.
You lost track after 100.
Yeah, we did 20 the first year, and we weren't even very good at it. So
20.
Over 20. Yeah.
Have you ever been scared?
Yeah. Have you ever been scared, Andy?
I have never personally been scared, but I have had things happen that
you couldn't explain, and they
were interesting
taunting
enough to where I was stepped off the property for a few minutes, had a cigarette, and went back. So I've had my perception radically altered before. Just all of a sudden, what is in front of me is no longer what's in my vision. What
were those conditions?
Essentially, I was trying to line up a camera. We had a camera go down. I went back, reset the thing, and tried aiming it at it was pointed over a balcony into a cemetery, and I just had a headstone in the view, and the recording equipment was 50 feet away, running on a hard wire, so I couldn't watch the monitor and the camera at the same, adjust the camera at the same time. So I tried to eyeball down the top of the camera. So I'm looking down the top of the camera at this headstone, but what I was seeing perceiving was actually all the stuff going on to the left of me. It's like I'm looking one way but seeing what's to the left. And that was so disorienting. I just said, okay, time for a break, and took 5 minutes and came back.
Whoa. So we've got a couple of minutes left here. Is there anything that you wanted to expound upon?
You want to talk about the center?
Actually,
coming up?
This is probably the first place this is going to be mentioned. But
all right, you heard it here first. This is another first.
We have a center.
Spirit Radio.
If you sit there, once you believe in ghosts and you believe in spirits and all that stuff, it starts leading places. And KRI owns a center in Greenland that I think we mentioned already. It's starting April 1st is going to be in Stratham instead. So we're no longer going to be KRI in Greenland. But I literally signed the lease yesterday.
Oh, terrific.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
so I can officially talk about it. It's going to be 81 Portsmouth Road, whatever it is, Route 108, just outside of Stratham, between the Stratham Circle and 101.
All right.
Okay.
So that's really exciting for us.
So you can get more information on the internet and for consciousness studies meetups.
Yep, the meetup is the consciousness studies. We also manage Seacoast Paranormal, which is sort of like a networking group for various paranormal groups, ghost hunting teams. What else? Walking Out Publishing, which is focused in the spiritual community.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we're doing what we can. You can't just go out and buy a $25,000 forward-looking infrared camera without having an income. So we do things to generate an income. So these are among the things that we do to try to get enough money for equipment.
Terrific. Okay, well, let me see. How many more minutes have we got, Willie? 2?
Yeah,
One?
about 2 minutes. Yeah.
All right.
Give me something juicy.
Well, how about your feelings about the difference between soul and consciousness?
Okay.
Here's a good one.
Consciousness is a quality that we can attribute to a person. We don't really know anything about it. Soul implies that the consciousness is separable from the body, but I don't see a difference other than that.
Yeah, I kind of get the feeling that when an entity is consciously around, that it is locked within a certain dimension, and I feel that once it finally breaks away from the shackles of its consciousness, it becomes pure soul, which probably is a transcendence to another dimension. So maybe we're talking fourth and fifth dimensions. I don't know.
Well, you get into sticky dimension word again.
It is
It's like
almost
talking
religious,
energy,
spiritual, but
Right.
it's an energy transformation. But I do believe that the consciousness of a person
Right.
probably kind of, I don't know if it dissipates or what it does, but it disappears from the scene. And you wind up with the soul, which is probably what is left over, which is part of the God principle. And you no longer will see its ghost. It has moved on, so to speak. That's kind of my interpretation.
Until you can put numbers on it, it's all just good talk. You know?
You can't measure everything, Andy.
if you can experience it, you can measure it.
Facts and figures.
That's how science works. That's where we're at.
That's all Andy wants to hear is
Yep.
facts and figures.
You know,
If you can't give me the facts,
that's right.
then it
Give me
doesn't
the
exist.
facts,
I
mister.
mean, we can speculate all day, but
Yep.
if you can't
Yeah.
put numbers on it, then it's just a good guess.
You gotta have a
But
theory, though.
I
you
can
know?
give you one unfortunate fact, though.
We do
We're out
have
of
to
time.
We're out
close
of
this
time.
out.
Yes, we are.
Well, hey, Lynn, it's great talking to you as always.
Thanks for coming on. You've been a great guest.
Have me out again, because I think this is fun.
Absolutely.
Maybe our
We
colleague
just
will
got
come
started.
Yep, we
All
just
right.
got started.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
well.
All right.
You
Thank
know
you,
where I
Andy.
am, or you know where I will be. So
Yeah, that's right.
We'll talk to you later.
That's
Thanks.
Andy Kitt
Okay.
from Kitt Research Initiative in Greenland, soon to be Stratham.
Soon to be Stratham.
And this is Spirit Radio, and we will talk to you next week.
Thanks for listening.